All right, guys. So I want to show you a recent clip from Bill Maher's show where he had Van Jones on, and they got into a little bit of a disagreement as to why young people, Gen Z, have so thoroughly turned against Israel and why there are protests happening on college campuses around the country in solidarity with Palestine. Now, Bill, in this clip, is going to try to make the case that it's because of something, wokeness, DEI, professors radicalizing young people. And Van Jones is going to say, no, no, no. The real reason is because young people, Gen Z, are simply being tricked by foreign actors pushing misinformation on social media. I wish I was kidding, guys. Let's go ahead and watch this clip, and I'll try to explain why this is utterly deranged.
But isn't part of that because we had to fold everything into critical race theory, and somehow the Middle East became part of,
I see it differently. And I love this conversation because I think people, those of us who went to college, give a lot more credit to college courses for how the world works than I do. This is not about critical race theory on college campuses. This is about Iran. Iran and Qatar have come up with a disinformation campaign that they are running through TikTok and Instagram that is massive. If you are a young person, you open up your phone and all you see is dead Gaza baby, dead Gaza baby, dead Gaza baby,
right.
Diddy, dead Gaza baby, dead Gaza baby. Like, that's basically your whole feed. So that's not DEI. That is a geopolitical adversary that is deliberately trying to divide the West against itself.
That view is not.
Okay, so he says, no, it's not because of DEI or wokeness. I guess presumably he would also say, no, it's not because of objective reality that young people are seeing on their social media feeds and saying, I disagree with this. I think this is a bad thing. I don't want my government to be complicit in this. No, he says this is because Iran and Qatar are pushing disinformation on social media. And he makes sort of like a sick and twisted joke as a part of that. And says people are seeing dead baby after dead baby after dead baby after something P. Diddy after dead baby. And I guess my first question would be like, how is it possible that there could be so many dead Palestinian babies on people's timelines if Israel wasn't killing so many Palestinian babies, right? You would think that that sort of logic may spin in his brain, but apparently not. Now, a couple of reasons why this is utterly insane. I mean, number one, as pointed out here by Sankara, Van Jones was the founder back in the 1990s, I believe, of a straight up Maoist organization. Like, he was studying Maoism and Marxist-Leninism, and now he's just, I guess, a sellout neoliberal centrist genocide denier. And that's sort of his position. I mean, it's kind of remarkable to see somebody do a complete 180 on, I guess, everything that they believe in. Right. Obviously, the money, the influence, the people that you get to be around, very powerful people. I guess that's a very tempting thing. So it's amazing for that reason. It's also amazing because what he's describing here of Iran and Qatar sort of trying to manipulate the algorithms or trying to, I guess, push misinformation, disinformation on social media, that is literally what Israel is and has been doing and is trying to escalate moving forward. So just a couple reminders on what's been happening on the online social media space in relation to Israel-Palestine. Obviously, if you know anything about the last 2 years of this, especially if you've been subscribed to my channel, you would know overwhelmingly the media landscape, both in the mainstream and on social media, has a massive pro-Israel bias. And if anything, it's the pro-Palestine content or the content that is highly critical of Israel that frequently gets censored. But again, this thing that he's describing of trying to use or peddle influence on social media algorithms, this is what Israel has been doing. So as a reminder, it was just last week that Benjamin Netanyahu, the head of state for Israel, was here in the U.S. while he was on his trip to the United Nations when he should be getting arrested, given that he has an international arrest warrant out from the ICC for him. But he instead is meeting with U.S. influencers, with American influencers here on U.S. soil, and describing to them how they need to have a greater influence on social media in order to push back on critics of genocide. And this is a part of a new strategy that Israel is using of straight up paying off American influencers to the tune of $7,000 per post as a part of this new campaign. First off, utterly bizarre. Like, can we not pretend that this is a normal thing, that a foreign head of state is here in the U.S. talking to American quote unquote influencers about how to push a more pro his country narrative on social media. Like, you would never see this with the German head of state or the French head of state or the Russian head of state or the Chinese head of state or any other country on earth. This is only one of those weird, uniquely Israeli things that I guess people accept as normal. Now, we also had this that I mentioned in a previous video a couple days ago. Israel has now earmarked over $500 million shekels, which is about $145 million in its 2025 budget to weaponize social media and ChatGPT in its largest U.S. propaganda push since it began carrying out the genocide in Gaza. They also say that this campaign, called Project 545, aims for 50 million monthly impressions, with 80% of its content aimed at Gen Z on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. So again, the exact precise thing that Van Jones is pretending is happening from Iran and Qatar is actually happening from Israel and has been happening. The greatest purveyor of misinformation and disinformation online is the Israeli government and defenders of what Israel has been doing in Gaza. It has been lie after lie, hoax after hoax on repeat for the last 2 years, and well before that, by the way. So, I mean, just remarkable there from Van. A couple other things. Again, how about objective reality, right? Could it not be the case? Could it not be a possibility that young people have turned against Israel and have turned against what they're doing in Gaza because they're seeing these videos on their social media feeds and they just disagree with them? They're just appalled and disgusted by the daily massacres of innocent men, women, and yes, children, babies, that have been massacred by the hundreds, the thousands over the last 2 years. They look at that and they say, this is fucked up, right? I don't want my government to be complicit in this anymore. That couldn't be the case. He couldn't fathom that maybe people are just seeing what's happening on the ground and they disagree with it. No, it has to be that they're getting tricked by Iran, or they're getting tricked by Qatar, or I guess the Israeli propaganda is not defeating the Hamas propaganda enough, or I guess in Bill Maher's mind, it's actually DEI or wokeness or radical college professors. It's like, no, this is not complicated, right? When you have stories like this, foreign doctors, and there have been many of them, including American doctors who have served inside of Gaza, who say that Israel is systematically targeting Gaza's children. There have been doctors who say on a daily basis, they saw children in Gaza who have been shot with single sniper bullets to the head or to the chest, right? This is not a normal war that we're witnessing here. This is the systematic destruction of an entire people. So when you see reports like this, and when you see images like this, it's not difficult. It's not a leap of faith to be against that, right? Or to be critical of that. So it's remarkable to me that you still have people who can't fathom as to why young people have turned against Israel. Again, this is just one of the latest overhead shots that we've seen from Gaza. I mean, to Bill Maher, to Van Jones, is anybody supposed to look at imagery like this and say, yeah, that's reasonable. Yeah, I guess there were Hamas militants that were in every single fucking building inside of Gaza for as far as the eye can see. This level of destruction, again, is not a normal part of war. This is not what war looks like. War can be incredibly destructive, right? But this is not what war looks like. This is what, again, the systematic destruction of an entire people, the intention to make Gaza unlivable for human beings, as has been openly stated as a goal by Israeli ministers. That's what this is. That's what this looks like. And again, young people are just, I guess, smarter than to fall for the Israeli propaganda, the Israeli Hezbollah attempts to justify this, right? Don't get mad or frustrated with young people that they see through the bullshit, right? And it's not that difficult to see through it, by the way. Now, a couple other things. Just in terms of what the Israeli government has been saying recently, again, if it's still difficult for people to figure out exactly what their goals are, here we have from I Really Hate You. In case of Hamas's refusal to the recent Trump plan, anyone who stays in Gaza will die. So this was on Israeli Channel 12. They say new details of the IDF's plan in case Hamas says no. Number one, Israel would give an ultimatum to the 200,000 residents still in Gaza City. The IDF will give them a short period of time to leave the city, and anyone who stays in the city after that time period is a terrorist. From that moment on, no electricity, water, or food, and anyone still in the city will die. This is an openly genocidal threat to hundreds of thousands of people, many of which, by the way, even if they wanted to, couldn't leave the north of Gaza, whether they're injured or they're sick or they're going through a famine right now, as a huge bulk of the population is in Gaza, or they are a child or they're elderly or whatever the case may be, many of them straight up can't leave the north of Gaza, not to mention that it's difficult to actually move down when you're being constantly targeted by the IDF. And then even beyond that, it's not as if in the south there's any resources waiting for these people in terms of medical supplies, in terms of food or water or whatever else the case, or shelter for that matter. So this is an impossible request or demand that they're making at the point of a gun, and saying anybody who remains, if Hamas says no to this, absolutely horrendous deal that the Trump administration and the Israelis have put forward to them, then everybody in the city will die. This is the kind of stuff that they openly declare. They openly talk about their genocidal ambitions. It's not difficult for young people to figure this kind of thing out. Now, moving on, we also have polling data that's come out. Now, I've shown you guys the polling data before on just young people, which again is overwhelmingly anti-Israel at this point. The US population broadly, in terms of Israel's actions in Gaza, also disagrees with Israel, but it's young people especially that have been leading the charge on this, especially with the protests. And now we also have some recent polling data here from the Washington Post on American Jews. Right? So the people who I guess Van Jones would think that he's standing up for, think that he's defending. So 61% of American Jews say that Israel has committed war crimes against Palestinians. I mean, almost a supermajority there. 39% say that it has committed a genocide. So contrary to what you hear oftentimes from Zionists and Israel defenders, that, oh, well, these Jewish pro-Palestine groups, or these Jewish organizations that are critical of Israel, they're just sort of like what Ben Shapiro would call like token Jews or whatever, or they don't really represent the American Jewish population. I mean, you can see in the polling data here, it is a sizable, 40% nearly of the American Jewish population that says Israel is straight up committing a genocide in Gaza. So Van isn't even representing, the views of even American Jews at this point who can see what Israel is doing. Now, another reason why this commentary from Van is utterly deranged is that who controls the spaces that we're talking about here online, on social media, in the mainstream media as well? I mean, there has been a full frontal assault from the pro-Israel crowd to hijack and to take over and to control all of these spaces. So a couple of recent developments on that. We had Barry Weiss, who is going to be the new editor-in-chief of CBS News after Paramount bought her website for, by the way, $150 million, I believe. This is the same Barry Weiss whose outlet, the Free Press, has been doing genocide denial coverage like this. Poster children of Gaza's hunger crisis are actually suffering from other illnesses. So they're dying and they're being starved, but they also have comorbidities. And so therefore, it's invalid. It's not a fair point to bring up that Israel is starving them, apparently. This is the kind of coverage that you get from the now editor-in-chief of CBS News. Again, that is an intentional effort to make somebody who is a self-described fanatical Zionist to be put in charge of an influential media outlet like that. It's for this reason, explicitly, to do genocide denialism at CBS News. And there's already some pushback that's happening within, CBS as an organization from people who work there and are terrified in terms of what this may mean. I mean, they say here from Zateo, what the fuck? CBS News insiders prepare for takeover by, again, self-described Zionist fanatic. Barry Weiss is expected to be announced as the editor-in-chief of CBS News as employees worry that her new role will bring a pro-Israel bias, more censorship, and lower editorial standards, which I think are all pretty fair bets that you could make. And this is pretty much the entire reason, actually, why Barry was put in this position in the first place. We also have, again, in terms of social media, we have the new U.S. TikTok owner, this guy, Larry Ellison, one of the wealthiest, if not the wealthiest men on the planet right now, funded Tony Blair and also ensured that Marco Rubio's loyalty test to Israel was valid. And by the way, this guy, Larry Ellison, who's now going to be essentially the owner of TikTok here in the US, he is the single largest individual donor to the IDF, to the Friends of the IDF fund. So these are the kinds of people who are largely influential in the US social media space, the US media space broadly. And by the way, that doesn't even get into, the whitewashing of this genocide that has just been standard place at any of these media outlets. I mean, whether it's even, the supposed liberal outlets like MSNBC or the New York Times or whatever else, they have all been whitewashing this genocide from the beginning. I mean, you might get the rare 1 in 10, 1 in 50 kinds of articles or segments that actually do a decent job at criticizing Israel, but overwhelmingly the US mainstream media and overwhelmingly these social media platforms are dominated by people who have been whitewashing this genocide. These recent steps that we're seeing with TikTok, with CBS, with Trump's further crackdowns on universities, all of that is just to take it up to the next level, to criminalize, right, to censor anybody who would dare to call out Israel's various war crimes. Now, final thing that I'll update you guys on, because we have some updates on the flotilla, right? So obviously the flotilla ships were intercepted, hijacked, essentially in an act of piracy and a war crime by Israel in international waters as they were trying to make their way to Gaza to bring humanitarian supplies and to break the illegal siege and blockade of Gaza that Israel has been implementing as they continue to starve the population. And so we now have some updates in terms of the treatment of some of these activists and politicians who were trying to make this journey to Gaza. So here from Shaul Ben Ephraim, he says, Israeli media confirms the reports of the horrific ways in which Greta Thunberg was treated by Israel, who's probably the most high-profile person who was on one of these flotilla ships, which tells you that this is them kind of trying to send a message or set the standard of even the most prominent, the most famous people who are trying to make this journey. We will treat them like this, right? So a couple of things. She was held in a cell infested with bed bugs, provided insufficient food and water leading to dehydration, developed a rash apparently from bed bug bites, forced to pose for photos while holding or wrapped in the Israeli flag and forced to kiss the flag, and then dragged by her hair and beaten. According to these Israeli reports, her harsh treatment is intended, again, as a warning because of her public status. There is no limit to the depravity. And there are already, by the way, other flotillas that are starting to make their way to Gaza, and many of those ships do not have people as prominent as Greta Thunberg. So keep your eyes on the continued attempts by these flotilla convoys to make their way to Gaza, because you couldn't put it past Israel to potentially straight up kill and try to attack some of the people who are on these ships. Now, we also had, again, Ben-Gvir, the war criminal, the minister of national security in Israel, who said that he was proud that flotilla activists were treated as terrorists, saying, this is my policy. So again, not exactly hiding what they were doing. And then final thing here, again, on that same point of watching out for Israel potentially trying to kill people on future flotillas. They've done it before historically. And then we also had this update, which should be of no surprise to anybody who's been paying attention. But if you guys remember, a couple of weeks ago, as this flotilla, the recent convoy, was earlier on in its journey and was near Tunisia, there were reports and videos that were emerging of some of these flotillas coming under attack, right? And what looked to be incendiary devices that were dropped on some of the flotilla ships. And at the time, you initially saw the Israelis saying, we don't know anything about it. Then you saw some of them floating the idea of it was actually a malfunctioned flare that somebody on the ship shot up, and then it fell back onto the ship, even though it didn't look like a flare. And it also happened to two separate ships. So how would that have possibly happened? But anyways, it was clear to everybody with half a brain at the time that no, this was Israel attacking these flotillas. Of course, they denied it, but now we get this update. So American intelligence officials have now confirmed to CBS News that Netanyahu ordered the drone attacks on the Samud flotilla while docked in Tunisia, an attack launched from Israeli Navy submarines off the Tunisian coast. So again, not surprising to anybody who's been paying attention, but it should be shocking, right? I know that this is Israel that we're talking about, and so nothing is really too shocking. You wouldn't put anything past them. But we're talking about Israel at a dock in Tunisia launching incendiary devices from Navy submarines against a humanitarian ship that's trying to bring supplies to the population that they're starving. Like, it doesn't really get more criminal than this. Not that international law seems to apply to Israel in any serious way, but it doesn't get more criminal than this. So again, just confirming what we already knew, and also a good point here made by Will Menaker, that this is sort of, I guess, CBS's buzzer beater before the Barry regime officially kicks in, because I can't imagine there's going to be much reporting like this moving forward. So I'll leave you guys off with that. Van Jones, absolute clown. Wild to see somebody and their career path do a complete 180 in the way that he has. But I guess this is who he is. This is who Bill Maher is. And these are the kinds of talking points that we're going to have to deal with moving forward. It seems like sort of a last breath, a last dying breath of attempts to justify what Israel is doing right now.
Politic guy has the best politics. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying